Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My dear brother and friend, colleague, Mawlud Oglo, the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Turkey, Your Excellency, and my dear brother, Dr. Riyad al-Maliki, Minister of State of Palestine, His Excellency, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency, Mr. Helga Maria Schmidt, Secretary General of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. At the outset, allow me to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to our gracious host today, the Republic of Turkey, and His Excellency, Mawlud Oglo, for the invitation to be a speaker in the 8th Istanbul Mediation Conference under the title Spotlight on Mediation in a Changing Pace Landscape. As we gather here today, against the backdrop of the regretful situation in Ukraine, we are reminded once again of the indispensability of international law, diplomacy, and mediation in guiding us to the shores of peace and security, and not letting us to succumb again in all of the ordeal of warfare. Respect for state sovereignty is an essential part of international relations, and as a principle, sovereignty is the cornerstone of international law. We firmly believe that mediation should be explored as an option to de-escalate the situation and eventually reach a solution that doesn't violate any state's independence and sovereignty. Mediation as a diplomatic approach is not only necessary to avoid conflict, it is by far the utmost responsibility enshrined in the United Nations Charter, particularly in the Chapter 6, which lays out the path of peaceful conflict resolution. As a matter of fact, the guiding principles behind mediation, this peaceful resolution of disputes, is a principle that is central to international law and global peace and security. Throughout history, we have learned time and time again that mediation has helped us to navigate in a very treacherous water in turbulent times, especially in international relationship. State of Kuwait is proudly to have a rich history of peaceful conflict resolution throughout mediation. And our propensity towards this diplomatic tool is guided by our aspiration for international community of nations where conflicts are resolved through peaceful means and where countries, no matter how deep their differences, can come together to find a way forward as it's been now for over 77 years after the creation of United Nations, which really came out of the ashes of a world war that has ravaged the whole international community. And that's why this conference is very important for us to learn from that lesson and learn from the two very important events that have paved a new world order, and to maintain it is a responsibility for each and every member of the 193 countries, members of the United Nations. Since the early days of our independence, we have always paid great attention to our brothers in Yemen. More recently, in 2016, with the support of the United Nations, Kuwait hosted an inclusive talks for resolving the crisis in Yemen between the legitimate Yemeni government and Houthis representatives. The negotiation lasted for 111 days. Negotiation resulted in 5 points of understanding and paved the way forward for the Stockholm meeting in 2018. This effort highlights Kuwait's commitment to the diplomatic track in reaching a political solution for a just, lasting, sustainable peace in Yemen. Kuwait reiterates the three references for paving the way forward for a peaceful resolution for the Yemeni crisis, the GCC initiative, the outcomes of the national dialogue, and the United Nations Security Council resolutions, including Resolution 2216. More recently even, and in a very dark spot in the history of GCC, as you all know, ladies and gentlemen, is a safe haven amongst all of the Arabic world. But back in 2017, GCC came to a crisis that jeopardized this safe harbor in the Arabic world. So Kuwait, from the beginning of the disagreement to its peaceful conclusion, Kuwait tirelessly worked towards reconciling the differences between our brethren. Drawing from our experience in mediation, inspired by the historical importance of this valuable institution, which is the GCC, considering the fact that every dispute is different, uniquely complex, we had to tailor approach to the GCC rift in order to navigate the mediation process successfully. Starting from encouraging the common denominator for a building of a confidence-building measures, towards restoring trust, reaching point to the Al-Ula agreement between the parties of the dispute, and in the process resuming the GCC momentum activity again. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm proudly to announce that now GCC is back in the game, strong as it ever was, as a force for peace in the region and around the world. Earlier this year, Kuwait, as president of the foreign ministers of the Arab League, we have worked with our partners and allies in the region to bridge the differences between Lebanon and some of the Arabic countries. This effort is important for Kuwait, owing to the great relationship that we have throughout history with Lebanon. Through our recent collaboration and contribution and efforts in Lebanon, we have conveyed three messages. Firstly, our firm commitment to stand shoulder to shoulder by Lebanon and help the Lebanese people. Furthermore, Kuwait conveyed the message of GCC, Arabic League, international community, of a desire to see Lebanon back on its feet, strong on its feet, and to gain again its prosperity in order to reach that point. And for the Lebanese officials, the need to implement the obligations of international law and all of the resolutions of United Nations. We ask the Lebanese themselves as well that Lebanon must not be used as a platform for launching any verbal attacks on any countries around the world. All of us here know the icon that Lebanon represents, and such action tarnishes all of the memory that we all have towards this beautiful country. Lastly, our strong conviction held along with other GCC countries that a strong and self-sufficient Lebanon will have benefits not only for Lebanon, but for the wider region as well. And here arises the importance of Lebanon in fulfilling, as I have said, its international obligations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the importance of preventive diplomacy cannot be understated, especially at this dire moment in history. It is essential for preventive diplomacy to come to light as a concrete step of action to ensure stability, peace, security, prosperity around the world. Kuwait firmly endorses Secretary General غوتيريش 4 recommendations for overcoming the prevention challenge, which are: 1, a surge in preventive diplomacy; 2, bold efforts to implement the Agenda 2030 and sustaining peace; 3, strengthened partnership; 4, comprehensive reform to overcome fragmentation and consolidate the UN capacities to deliver. Kuwait's mediation efforts are well documented and represent a strong case study in support of mediation throughout history. All of us need to creatively utilize both direct and indirect mediation effort, which reflects a deep understanding of mediation and a strong commitment to the principle of UN Charter and international law. As we gather here to discuss again the mediation, we must acknowledge that changes are occurring around the world and that challenges are getting more difficult to resolve because lots of countries around the world are not firm believers of international law and UN Charter or not implementing them. That's why the method needs a cohesive approach for it to be to have a better outcome. One way to achieve this goal of improving the multilateralism and improving our way of diplomacy and mediation is to enlarge the role of multilateral organizations, both regional and international. This role would be in line with Chapter 8 of United Nations Charter, which sets out the rules of these organizations. Another way to improve mediation is to draw upon the institutional experiences of countries around the world who have played and perfected this role. Much can be learned from the success and failure of mediation efforts undergone by experienced actors. And again, in this dire time, I truly don't see at all that now it is a test and trial issue. Now is the time for actions and deeds, and especially to prevent a harsh development that would affect the whole world. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.